Bill 1, the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act, is a first step in standing up for Albertans and pushing Ottawa back into its own lane. When passed, this legislation will create a constitutional legal framework for Alberta to push back against federal interference and encroachment. The federal government is actively attempting to landlock our natural resources, penalize our energy and agriculture producers, cut fertilizer use, control the delivery of health, education, childcare, and other social programs with strings-attached funding, and confiscate legally owned firearms. And that's just a few examples. The framework provided under the Act will allow Alberta's Legislative Assembly to identify constitutional concerns with a specific federal program or piece of legislation, and then recommend a measured and appropriate response to prevent or frustrate that federal intrusion. Our province will not enforce unconstitutional or harmful Ottawa policies or laws in Alberta. Albertans come first, always.
The Act sets out a transparent process that must be followed before Alberta's government can issue any directions or actions pursuant to it. This process will ensure that any use of the Act reflects the will of the Legislative Assembly, the will of Albertans, and is in line with the Constitution. I'd like to outline for you the steps that would be taken in relation to using this piece of legislation. The Premier or any minister would introduce a motion for a resolution on how they propose to use the Act. This motion would identify a federal matter. This could be a federal program or a federal piece of legislation as being either unconstitutional or causing harm to Albertans, and would propose steps for Cabinet to take. The Legislative Assembly would then debate the proposed resolution, and the resolution would pass only if the majority of MLAs voted in favor of it. If the motion doesn't pass, the resolution would fail, and the proposed use of the Act wouldn't take place. If the motion does pass, the resolution would succeed, and Cabinet would then decide what specific steps or actions the province should take in response to the federal government's overreach. The steps or actions taken would depend entirely on the motion passed and on what Cabinet believes would be most effective as a means to ensuring that the federal government does not overstep its authority. Now, no matter what the particular steps or actions in response may be, they would have to meet all applicable constitutional and legal requirements. Cabinet could, for example, decide to change any provincial enactments. This could include amending legislation, regulations, or other orders in order to assert provincial jurisdiction. Cabinet could also give specific directives to, and this is from the legislation, quote, provincial entities and to the Crown, such as specific ministers, end quote. And these provincial entities include schools, most public post-secondary learning institutions, municipalities, and municipal police services. The Act would only allow Cabinet to issue orders in council which are constitutional. That is to say, directives which fall within provincial legislative jurisdiction. If the use of the Act against a federal program or federal piece of legislation was approved by the Legislative Assembly and later challenged in court, the Alberta government would respect the court's decision.
Why do you need the power to rewrite laws without going through the legislature?
We need the power to reset the relationship with Ottawa. That's what this is all about. We've tried different things in the past and it hasn't worked. So we've got to try something new. We want
why you need this power. Like, what is so urgent that you would use what is normally an emergency power to skip around the legislature to put
because we've been ignored.
Point on.
We've been ignored for 10 years. The former Premier, Rachel Notley, tried the climate leadership plan to get a better relationship with Ottawa. It failed. Former Premier Jason Kenney tried to have a collaborative relationship with Stephen Guilbeault in Quebec to get LNG export. It failed. We put forward an equalization referendum to try to start a conversation to change the relationship with Ottawa. It failed. So now we're going to try something new. I think we've got their attention. We've got their attention because I know with the relationship that we're now seeing develop with the federal government, finally recognizing that they cannot pass carte blanche power over our natural resources, that they have recognized our industrial pricing program around industrial emissions for CO2, that they have accepted that natural resources fall within our jurisdiction. I think that that begins a constructive relationship, and that's what this was all about. You do not have that relationship change without a push. This was a push. And here's the point. I hope we never have to use this bill. I hope that we've sent a message to Ottawa that we will vigorously defend our constitutional areas of jurisdiction, and they should just butt out.